Hi, Shihan. It's really great to see you. We are super excited to be launching this kit with you today. Do you mind talking about yourself a little bit, or do you mind introducing yourself?
Yeah. So, hey, my name is Sheehan, and right now I'm a computer science student at the University of Waterloo, and I'm joining here from my home kitchen in Toronto with my Eat Cake for Breakfast apron. So, I just really like baking after a long day of work or in between assignments. It's just a great way to de-stress, and I really like creating new desserts and just exploring my creativity in this hobby.
How did you even hear about the competition? Are you like an avid subtle Asian baking or cooking fan?
Yeah, so what happened was at the start of quarantine last year, one of my friends invited me to join this Facebook channel called Subtle Asian Cooking, and I joined it not really expecting or knowing what it was really about. And then I got so much inspiration from all the unique desserts and posts that the members would make in that group, and it was just such a cool thing to join. And then one day I saw a post about this Kids contest, and I thought it was really interesting, and I wanted to see what it was about. So I entered, and here we are.
Awesome. We were super impressed with your background, and also we do focus a lot on Asian American nostalgia, which is one of the reasons why we picked your dessert. Do you mind explaining like the inspiration that came behind it?
Yeah, so my dessert is pretty much a jasmine peach tea drink, but in a cookie sandwich form. So it's officially going to be called the Jasmine Peach Langue, and it is pretty much a layer of jasmine tea flavored sandwich cookies, and in between there's peach jam and cream.
Well, how did you come up with like did you like drinking the jasmine peach tea, or is it something that was like resonated with you in a different way?
Yeah. So I actually wasn't much of a tea drinker when I was younger, but then I think in recent years I've just really liked how it was a bit more flavorful than water, and then I also just like really like trying out different types of tea. And I think jasmine and peach is just such a soothing, calming flavor, and it's really familiar. And I just thought it'd be really cool to turn it into a dessert form.
Cool. Should we start baking? Or like
Yeah, sure.
the motions of baking?
Sure. Yeah, so right now I'm just going to be doing the first step of the recipe, which is melting the butter, and then also I'm going to be steeping the tea into it after it's melted. So I just have my butter here. I'm going to turn the heat on, and I'm just going to dump it into my pan. And if you want this to be a bit simpler, it's also perfectly fine to melt in the microwave, and just make sure that you cover it with something because it does tend to splatter sometimes.
Pro tip: cover in microwave. Also, why do you steep the tea inside the butter?
Oh yeah, so I think like the butter, if you just put the tea powder directly into the cookies, there's less flavor. And I think steeping the tea is also kind of similar to how you make actual tea. So it just lets the flavors infuse a lot better, and gives it a richer jasmine flavor.
Ooh, sounds great. So why did you pick jasmine tea? I'm so curious.
Yeah, so I feel like tea time is so like calming, and there's so much culture and tradition behind it. And I think that after I just have a lot of memories of like after having a long dinner, everyone's stuffed, but then we catch up over a cup of tea, and I think it's just like a really nice thing.
Were there any like personal revelations about yourself and your culture while you're creating this dessert?
Okay, no. I guess like one thing was when I'm baking. I think baking requires a lot of like starting capital in a sense, where like a lot of equipment is like a one-purpose equipment thing, and then if you don't have it, it's hard to make a dessert. So I thought that these desserts were like really elegant, and they had a lot of parts, flavors, and textures, but at the same time, it was relatively simple to make with not very complex or fancy ingredients. Yeah, and right now the butter is melting a lot, so I'm just going to pour my jasmine tea powder into the butter, and then I'm going to swirl around a bit and let it steep. Yeah. I'll be pouring into a bowl later, so it's easier to see. So right now I'm just going to pour the butter into a bowl so it can cool a bit faster.
Oh wow.
And
Really, like, brown.
yeah. I grounded these tea leaves in my coffee bean grinder. So they're super fine, and it's like very similar to matcha powder. Yep. So I'm just gonna take this and let it cool in the fridge.
So, as you probably know, one thing that, well, right now we are launching this kit with our Asian American Heritage Collection. And I did want to ask if this held any kind of meaning to you as an Asian American, just like being a part of something like an initiative
Yeah.
with more Asian American bakers.
Yeah, so I think like one of the things when I first started baking and I was more into Western desserts, I think a lot of the flavors were pretty repetitive and kind of like more basic, or I wasn't as drawn to them. Like basic like chocolate or like vanilla or like peanut butter or stuff like that. I think that when I saw Kitsby's page, I found so many interesting flavors, and I think that by partnering with you guys, it's like a great way to introduce more unique and interesting flavors to a more mainstream audience, and then also show and challenge like what people think about desserts and like the types of flavors you can infuse. Because there's some like really creative stuff out there that I feel like not enough people like have awareness about or enjoy as much.
What are your favorite Asian flavors?
Okay, I do think salted egg yolk is just a favorite because I like the memories of during Mooncake Festival. Well, I call it Mid-Autumn Festival. When I was a kid, I just dig out the salted egg yolk from the center and then make my parents eat the outside. So there's like memories associated with that. And then, I really just like anything tea flavored as well, because I think it really helps cut the richness of like a lot of sweets, and then also like the butteriness. And it gives you like a really, really nice lingering flavor in your mouth.
Is there a reason why the butter has to be cold?
Yeah. So when it's cooled to a softened consistency, that's when you're able to whip it and like really incorporate and dissolve the sugar into the butter, and that just gives it a much finer and nicer texture. Or also, it's a little bit more dense, but you can't go wrong. Okay, back in the freezer. Yeah. So now my butter has cooled to a softened, like room temp consistency. And I'll be adding the sugar in and then whipping it. So it's a bit of an arm workout until it's light, pale, and fluffy. And I'll also be adding the salt in.
Okay, so what did you want to express by creating this specific recipe?
Yeah, I think I wanted to express that it's like easy and really fun to be able to make such a cool dessert. So I think like a lot of people are, a little bit scared of baking at first, or scared of cooking in general. But I think like I just wanted to show that it was really easy to, and like it's enjoyable to make a dessert with multiple components and also different flavors.
How did you pair the dessert flavors? I know peach and jasmine only come in one form in my book, which is bubble tea.
When I make desserts, I really like desserts with a lot of different textures, and then also a lot of different flavors that complement each other. So I thought that the cookies were a lot like more buttery, crisp, and sweet, but also like with that like bitter edge from the tea. And then I thought that was like a perfect complement to the creaminess of like the whipped cream, and then like a jammy texture from the peach jam.
So if you were to give someone at home who's trying this recipe out for the first time, is there any specific tips or tricks up your sleeve you'd say to do and not to do?
Yeah. So I think one tip I would give is when you're waiting for the butter to cool, just make sure it's like still a nice soft consistency, like it doesn't get too hard. So you just want to make sure you're able to like aerate the mixture when you're mixing it, like as I am right now. So it gets a lot paler and fluffier.
You see the difference in the pale, fluffy butter versus like when you started out with the cool one?
Yeah, for sure. I will show you in a second once I'm done whipping, but you'll see that it's a lot lighter than at first. And I think from the pictures in the instruction kit, you'll also be able to see a bit of a color difference. So now after whipping, you can see it's a lot lighter than it was before. And this is because the granulated sugar is able to provide frictions for you to aerate your butter when you're whipping. Yeah, so now I will be adding the egg whites in. So at this step, since you're mixing a very oily mixture with like a water-based mixture, it might be hard to incorporate at first because it might separate a bit. And this is like the second part of your arm workout. I'm getting that to be smooth. So I'm just cracking an egg and making sure the egg white drips in. I don't use any fancy methods here, but yeah, this works. And it's perfectly fine if you get a little bit of egg yolk into your batter, because it's not, because there's already so much oil in it, it doesn't really matter. And this is my second egg white.
So as an Asian American, how has your view on desserts been affected by Western kind of culture?
Yeah, so I think Asian desserts tend to be, I think, lighter, and then a lot of people have less strong taste. So I think that like whenever I make desserts, it's always like very common to be like, oh, put like half the sugar in, or like cut out like a bit of the butter just to like suit like the different tastes from like as like the Asian friends or family that I am baking for. And then I also think it's pretty different in terms of like just like cafes in Asia are very like, I'd say they're very cute, and they're optimized based on like different characters. But whereas Western desserts I think are more just like rustic styled kind of in a sense, and then they're also just like really focused on like the food. Yeah, so after a lot of whipping, your batter will come together and it'll be a little bit liquidy like this. So now it's time to add your flour and starch. So when you mix this in, this is like the most chill part. You don't have to whisk or mix it as vigorously as before, just because you don't want any gluten to develop, so it turns like tough. You just want to mix it until there's no streaks left to make sure it's as tender as possible. Yeah. Okay, so now with the batter finished, it should look something like this. I will be loading into my pastry bag and piping them into circles and baking. Okay, so right now, to pipe it into nicer shapes, there's a template. So this paper template is just for piping purposes, and you gotta make sure to remove this before you put it in the oven. But the paper layer will go into the tray first, and then followed by the parchment paper. As you can see, you'll be able to see the circles underneath the parchment. So this can be a guide for you when you are piping the dough or the batter onto the sheet. So one of the most important things to remember is to twist the end of your piping bag so that when you squeeze it, no batter comes out the other end, because that can get pretty messy. And then otherwise, I just like to hold this end stable with one hand and then use the other hand to kind of guide the tip. So all you're gonna do is use this hand and carefully squeeze the batter. So we're just gonna squeeze the batter carefully into the circle until it approximately fills the printed circle that was on the sheet. It doesn't have to be perfect, and you just have to move it around a bit, but just make sure it's not too big or else it'll spread too much, and you'll end up with one huge cookie. So I'll just continue piping. Yeah, you just want to go slowly because it's always easier to recover. And yeah, but piping is really fun, and I think it does take a bit of practice for the first time. Sometimes you'll learn how to control the pressure you apply when squeezing the batter out more, and I find it really fun and satisfying. Yeah, so now that I'm done baking, as I said before, remember not to slide the paper template out from underneath, just so it doesn't burn when you're baking in the oven. And now we should be left with nice pipe circles of your batter, and I'll put these into the oven.
So where can people find you in terms of like Instagram or like any shout outs?
Yeah, so I mainly just post my creations on an Instagram account called She Hangry, which is kind of a genius pun on my name. When I was creating this Instagram handle, I asked my friends for input, and they were like, She Hangry is the perfect name. So yeah, She Hangry on Instagram. Yeah, Amy, I had such a nice time baking with you. It was super fun. And yeah, check out kitsme.com to get your kit. And just a note, we'll be donating 50% of the proceeds to AAPI Community Fund. And I hope you guys have a great time baking and enjoy the recipe. Thank you.